In a few moments, you will have an experience which will seem completely real. It will be the result of your subconscious fears transformed to your conscious awareness. You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's happening, everybody? How's it going? Thank you again for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday live podcast. Well, guys, tonight is a very special show. This has been a show in the making for a long time. And I'm actually quite happy that I'm sitting down with these two really cool individuals tonight who have decided to sit down and embark on this journey with me. This is a really awesome thing. So, but nonetheless, let's kind of preface this. I have a little bit of a speech that I wrote that I would like to say real quick. Tonight is a big night for many reasons. For the past almost 9 years, now going on 10, our American collective has been immensely divided. Civil discourse and dialectic have ceased to be. We have lost our connection to each other. We have lost respect and humility for those who don't agree with us or see things differently than we do. Most importantly, we have lost our sense of community, honoring thy neighbor, while both sides of the bipartisan system defend government over the human who lives next door to you, or the human you ride the bus with, or the human you go to work with, or the human you see at daycare when you take your kid there. All in all, our government only seeks these things, power and control. This is why it is important for us to have these conversations, cultivate peace and unity in our collective, without the influence from any governing body, because united we stand, divided we fall. My goal tonight is to begin the cultivation of this peace and unity back to our collective, bring back civil discourse and educated debates. In my eyes, this is the way. And without further ado, let me introduce my guests. Alrighty, guys. First on the stage, we are going to bring Miss Lainey up. Hi, Lainey. How's it going?
Hello. How are you?
I am good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to bring on Marshall. Hey, Marshall. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Let's get down to it. So let's start off with Lainey real quick. So, Lainey, why don't you just educate everybody and all the listeners real fast? A little bit about yourself, your opinion, where you kind of sit with everything at this point in time. And yeah, let's start.
Okay, so I guess I'll start with I am a 20-year special operations spouse. My husband served attached to the Navy SEALs for 20 years as their bomb expert on their team, their EOD guy. We ended up creating a nonprofit for veterans and first responders for mental health and wellness services. And I'm also a psychedelic integration coach.
Okay.
People kind of prep them for their psychedelic experience and then helping them integrate as they come back. I was a long-time hardcore Democrat for most of my adult life and ended up shifting. And I would say I lean more conservative now, much more conservative now, but I do still kind of lie in between with a lot of the social justice issues, I guess you could say. So.
Okay, cool. So we're starting off with a little bit of common ground. I really like that. And that's awesome. This is a good, kind of basis we can start our conversation off on. Marshall, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your opinion, and where you sit in all of this as well?
Okay. First of all, I just want to apologize for my voice. I'm kind of going through a bout of laryngitis, so bear with me on that. And if you need me to repeat myself, just ask. Thanks for having me on the show. About me, I'm a contractor, construction. I own a business in Virginia, Northern Virginia. I've been in this area now for about, I guess, 15 years off and on. I grew up in Florida, so I guess there's a bit of a disconnect there. Certainly culturally, I've felt that impact. Um, I've always been an independent when it comes to politics. Um, I grew up pretty much under a Christian influence, and I would probably have I definitely considered myself a Christian for probably the first 30 years of my life, with varying degrees of dedication. These days, I'm definitely an atheist. I feel like that's a very subjective term too, so maybe we can get into that later. But I don't believe in the Christian. I don't believe in the Christian doctrine. Um, in fact, I'm pretty anti-Christian. I like your title, by the way, resident heretic. I can get with that. But anyway, yeah, over the past, even though I am still an independent, I've recently registered as a Democrat, and that's not because I affiliate necessarily. It's rather just so that I can participate in primary elections and things like that. But I also see no reason to even entertain the possibility of voting Republican. Pretty much since John McCain died, I see no semblance of um, rationalism coming out of that side of it. So until things change and it moves away from this, what I consider to be a cult, Trumpism, I have no interest in the Republican Party, and so I guess I'm more of a Democrat these days, even though I don't really like to give myself that label.
I can completely understand, man. And based on what I'm hearing from the both of you, it seems like, we're already starting off with a little bit of common ground. Lainey, I can resonate with your story. I mean, especially coming from your background, being a special ops wife and all of that. And, Marshall, I completely understand. I grew up in the middle of the schism, man. My mom's side of the family was Roman Catholic. My dad's side of the family was Greek Orthodox. So, I also kind of had a bad taste in my mouth for, organized religion. And, I researched deeper into it, and there's kind of a story behind that. Maybe you and I can talk about that some other time. All right. Nonetheless, let's kind of get started. All right. One question I want to kind of ask the both of you, and this is going to kind of just clear the air. And it's going to seem kind of generic, but that's because it's meant to be expanded upon in your subjective sense and in your perspective as well. Do you feel that it is okay to force people to do things that they don't wish to do? And we will start off with Lainey. What are your thoughts on that question?
I honestly think that depends on the situation.
Gotcha.
Being a mom of two boys, I have to force them to do things they don't want to do all the time. But I would say that I lean more towards, if we're speaking about government, I really want less government in my life telling me what to do. I think, or I would assume that most people do. I think that when you're an adult, you're able to take the liberty to kind of govern yourself if you're well of mind and all of that. So, yeah, I would say when it comes to the government, and I am a person that is, intelligent thinking, and there's nothing wrong with me, and I have, the discourse to make my own decisions. I would not like people to tell me what to do.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good answer. And yeah, we'll kind of go with that premise of government. Yeah, I understand being a mom, you have no choice. Well,
it's like, if people are impaired or, there's certain, situations where, yes, you do have to force, things upon people for the well-being or the betterment of the public. But for the most part, no, I don't. I think I would like people to stay out of my adult decisions for myself.
It's a good way to put it, Lainey. Alrighty, Marshall, coming off of what Lainey just said, let's just stick in the aspect of government. Do you feel that a government do you feel it's okay that a government would force people to do something that they don't want to do? And obviously, what I mean this is in a sense of general, rights, responsibilities, and things like that. Obviously, if we have somebody who is impaired and they can't take care of themselves, we're walking into a different ballpark there. So, Marshall, let's kind of hear your thoughts on this question as well.
Okay, yeah, so I agree with Lainey. As long as we're talking about adults who are capable of making decisions that don't hurt them or other themselves or other people, then yes, I believe that people should be able to do what they want to do, assuming what they want to do doesn't involve hurting other people, taking away other people's rights or privileges, marginalizing them in a way that affects their ability to pursue happiness in life within reasonable parameters.
Absolutely. Well, dang, guys, we're already finding some kind of common ground. This is really interesting.
Life,
so, like, it's
liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right?
absolutely no. This is awesome, man. Because innately, that's what we all want, right? I mean, we want the ability to live a free life. We want the ability to, have our personal sovereignty. When it comes to actually, you guys just got some props from the audience. We got Don Rogers on March 4th Productions saying, well said on all parts. And we got Mr. Heavyweight Slice Feels going epic first question. Thank you, Drew. But no, and that's what it is. That's what we all ultimately want, right? I mean, we want the ability to have free lives, make the best decisions for ourselves and our families, and have that freedom and that liberty. All right, so we're going to kind of dive into the first topic, and I have an article with this too. Let's talk about female rights, such as abortion. I know this has been one of the biggest polarizing topics between the right and the left as of lately. And really what's interesting is we have different perspectives and on each side of the fence. So, Lainey, let's get your opinion about it, how you feel. Then we'll go to Marshall. And then I have an article I want to show the both of you because it's very interesting because it kind of sits in a very strange middle ground. So, Lainey, why don't you go first?
Do I think the government should be able to make that decision for us? No, it's a very personal decision, but it's tragic. And I think when you make that decision, it causes there's a lot that comes behind that. If a woman decides to do that, the thing that I'm afraid of is that the new kind of the new topic around it is that it's being used as birth control. I really don't like that. That, people can go in and it's their first line of defense against pregnancy. They're getting multiple abortions. And I think that there needs to be a line drawn. I don't know how that is done or if the government should be able to step in and do that. But I'm seeing that there is a topic of conversation that abortion is now being used as a form of birth control, and that's extremely concerning to me. So I'll let Marshall kind of give his ideas on that, and maybe we can bounce off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Marshall, what are your thoughts on abortion? Do you feel the government should have control over it? Do you feel the government should even have a say in it? Or do you think it is right or wrong?
I think it's ridiculous that the government would have a say in something they have no personal involvement in. I think it's tragic that a mother in need, potentially in danger, would have to go through channels dealing with bureaucracy and people who don't care about her or her situation. Should ever have to talk to anyone she doesn't want to talk to about such an important and powerful and personal decision. My opinion on abortion, whether I like it or not, no, I don't like the idea of someone being in a situation they don't want to be in. But I also, the first thing I recognize is that there's only one person who has the authority and the perspective to make that choice, and that's the person in that situation, the mother.
You don't think the father has any say in it?
Yeah, I do think he has a say. And if the mother needs advice, I think he's probably the first person she should talk to, if that's an option. Sometimes that's not the case. Rape, incest, or just well, lots of scenarios that really are none of my business again.
Yeah. What would you say in the sense of the mother wants the abortion, but the father wants to keep the baby, and would negate, any responsibility to the mother as long as she go along with the birth? What would you say about that?
Well, I do think that's a very difficult and personal decision, and I know I feel really sorry for any man out there who was expecting to be a father and suddenly realizes a little too late that the person he's been intimate with has decided that she doesn't want to be a mother, but he's not the one that has to carry that pregnancy to term. It is his business, but it's her decision, and it's pretty simple with me. I don't think the father should be able to veto that choice or have a superior voice in that conversation.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
now,
can I just say one thing to that? Is like,
absolutely.
not only is it his business, it's also shared DNA. It's half his, and so, yeah.
So real quick,
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
if you don't mind me butting in, so I get what Lainey's trying to say, Marshall, is,
Are you mansplaining?
No, I'm not mansplaining.
Explaining for me.
What do they call? So the female version of mansplaining is she elaborating.
Ah,
Yeah.
That's the female version of it. No. So I guess what she's trying to say is like, I'm not mansplaining. I'm coming in and I'm just kind of like giving like, a mediumship on this. I'm coming in and just saying, there's a lot of one thing I feel that's happened in our American culture a lot is there's been a dissipation of the family unit in the eyes of our society. Obviously we live in different times. That's the one thing I can kind of resonate with Marshall on a little bit in this too, is because that's the one thing I disagree with some conservative ideas, is because we are in a different time. We're in the year 2025, and we can't go back in time and be the way we used to be. We're past that point. That doesn't mean we can't take these values, these traditions, such as, this family unit, this nuclear family unit, and we can't impart them in ways that work with the time that we're in also. So, and so I guess where she's coming from is, you're looking at, the father, someone who wants to be a father, somebody, let's say these individuals are married, just throw out the example there. And the father wants to have the kid. I mean, essentially when you're in a marriage, I would even say on that, it's a partnership. It's a mutual decision. I think that's kind of where Lainey's coming from on that. And I understand where you're coming from too, man. Like, I'm a big believer, like, and I even posted it the other day. I think freedom, as long as you're not taking from, hurting from, killing, raping, and doing any of the obvious things that we know are bad. I mean, I think even if I don't agree with what you're doing, I think you should have the freedom to do it. You know what I mean? And I will never stop you or interject my opinion onto your freedom. So nonetheless, I want to bring up this little article. This is very interesting. So this is actually an NIH article. We won't get into it too long. I just kind of want to read the beginning part. So this NIH article kind of finds a middle ground for the, abortion point off. And where this is kind of basing off of is, the differences. We have the right, who believes that it's absolutely wrong and that the baby is alive as soon as conception. And then we have the left, who disagree with that notion. They feel like they're taking more of a scientific approach. I mean, we have to sit there and resonate with that. So, Abortion is one of the most controversial issues discussed in medical ethics. We can formulate the argument which is put forward by the opponents of abortion as follows. Fetus has to be regarded as a human being. Killing an innocent human being is morally wrong. Aborting is an example of killing and terminating a human being's life. So being engaged in aborting is morally wrong. So this is just the excerpt of it, but this is the one thing I want to highlight, just this section here. In this paper, I'm going to argue that the proponent's argument with regard to the implausibility of categorizing fetus as human being is unjustified and wanting. In other words, the way in which the proponents of abortion talk about the idea of personhood is inadequate and vague, semantically speaking. The outline of the argument is as follows. The proponents of abortion are confronted with a dilemma. According to the first horn of the dilemma, the proponents have to subscribe to infanticide, which is morally wrong, intuitively speaking. According to the second horn of the dilemma, there is a semantic story which needs to be expressed by the proponents with regard to the cutoff point of the concept of personhood. Otherwise, the first premise will not be as convincing if raised in favor of the plausibility of committing abortion. So one thing I really find very interesting about this is it's a middle ground. It's somebody taking a logical approach to this topic, not having a deep emotional attachment into it, and kind of dissecting, both of the arguments on both sides and finding a middle ground. So yeah, that was something I wanted to share with the both of you.
We've all kind of stated with your first question that the government should not impede on our choices unless it causes harm, or somebody's going to be killed, and we've said unless somebody's being killed or harmed, or and I'm Marshall and Steve, I'm not being combative at all. Like, I really wanted to join this just to have like a curiosity of mindset. So would you not consider abortion as harming or killing another individual, or how do you view like a fetus, or like what is that viewpoint for you?
In my direct opinion, okay, I kind of sit on the outliers. I don't really sit in what you would call the consensual opinion of this. Mm-hmm. So in my personal philosophy as a psychedelic, integration coach, you might understand what I'm about to say. Everything is consciousness, mm-hmm. right? So I feel that our consciousness is a prime fundamental of our reality. I think it is a prime basis for the reality that we experience. And with that being said, it being the prime fundamental of this reality, I do believe it is somewhat has some kind of essence to it upon, being fertilized, the egg being fertilized, so that is just my opinion. You know what I mean? I do think, and also too, we look at the studies of DMT. We look at how, that's our endogenous psychedelic. Okay. Like, it's released while we're in the womb. It's released before we're born. It's released while we dream at night, and it's released 6 seconds after we die. And I didn't have time to pull up the study tonight, but there's another NIH study that they monitored DMT releases in an embryo. And the first release was within, I believe, 45 days. Okay. So I'm not saying that it's not conscious or doesn't have some kind of essence to it beforehand. I'm a big person that'll I can tell you when I don't know. That's the thing. I will never claim to know something that I don't know. Yeah. So that's my opinion on it. I, of course, like I said, I kind of sit a little bit outside of the, what most people think, so that's definitely my thoughts. Yes, I do think it's live. Marshall, why don't you kind of add in on this too? Let's get your opinion on this as well. I don't want to be the only one talking and all that. So yeah, let's go, man. Let's hear what you have to say.
Well, I think that you both raised some interesting points. Obviously, medical science hasn't been able to, for decades, been arguing over when a pregnancy becomes life. And I don't think that's anything that's going to be solved anytime soon. But I will say that women, this is a generalization, but I think it's valid, that there's not a lot of women out there who are looking to carry pregnancy into the later term and then decide that they want to terminate that pregnancy unless there's a real health concern or there's a real life-changing concern. Again, it's really just none of my business, and that's really where I want to kind of make my stand. Is this is all great? We can talk about it amongst ourselves. We're adults. I don't know if any of us here are pregnant. I'm not, and I'm not faced with that crazy choice right now to decide whether or not I am personally able, financially, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, whatever, physically, to bring a child into the world. But I just know that it's not my business. And I was going to say one other thing that I thought was really important. I forgot, so I'll tell you if it comes up again. The point is, it's just not for me to decide.
Understood. Understood.
Valid, totally valid.
And I agree with you, man. Like, that's why. I mean, if you guys ever check out my shows in the future, if you decide to, I never once speak on it. And the reason why I don't.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
We've got over 2 million children in foster care. We've got starving children. We've got people who are dying of exposure because we have too many people in this country. We're putting people on trains and planes and buses right now to ship them back to third world countries where they're dying from gangs, violence, hunger. And we're sitting here arguing about whether or not the government should get involved in bringing more people into this world for people who can't afford them, until the Republican Party starts talking about how they're going to handle the problem, the crisis that we have of children who are malnourished and undercared for in this country. And I'm really tired of them talking about how they're pro-life and how they care about saving lives. They don't give a shit about saving lives. If they did, they'd be worried about the people, the children who are living today. And they definitely have consciousness and they definitely have feelings. And I'm not going to sit here and debate when that started, what point in the mother's womb that consciousness developed. But it is a fact that they live and they exist in society today. And the Republican Party turns their back on them every chance they get. And they defund those children the needs that they need to survive every day, while they sit here and they hold up their fucking heads and they act like they're big shots and they're benevolent and they care so much because they're going to save an embryo. Which, by the way, if you put an embryo in the freezer and you thaw the embryo, it still develops into a fetus. If you try to put a baby in a freezer, a baby dies. All I'm saying with that, it's a silly point, it's a silly anecdote, but it does show that there is a distinction between an embryo and a baby. Where that actually happens, or it becomes just a clump of cells and becomes a life form, I don't know. I'm not a fucking doctor. I just know it's none of my fucking business. We have kids right now that need our help.
Absolutely. I can resonate completely.
Well,
yeah.
I have a question about that. So
Sure.
The Democrats have been kind of the ruling power for 12 out of the past 6. So why are you putting...
Or 4 out of the last 9.
Well, let's look at the long scale of,
Okay, let's look at it even longer. Let's go back through the Bush administration and the Reagan administration. Let's do the math.
But, why are you only putting that on
your scale? Just seems to be very convenient to what the point you're trying to make. That's all I'm saying.
I'm giving you facts. You guys have been in power for 12 out of the past 16 years.
Not me, man.
So one thing I'm going to say real quick. Let's be understanding. I'm sorry. That's just one thing I wanted to throw in there. Yeah.
No, I'm not trying to be combative, but I'm saying,
no, of course you're not. Yeah.
Putting this solely on the Republican Party when there has been, a very long strain of Democratic power, for the past 16 years.
If you're suggesting that the Democrats, with the limited power that they've had with, varying Congress favor and power in the Senate, if they could have done more to help people, then absolutely yes. Again, I'm not here to defend the Democrats, but the Republicans are making abortion their banner, their what they call to order, and their rallying cry for the past 20 years, and yet they don't give a shit about children who are actually alive. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, Democrats should do more. I hope they do. But they're not over here talking about how they need to save children in the womb, which would only make the problem exponentially worse when there are mothers who are not in a financial, physical, mental condition to take care of for a child. Where do you think those children end up?
I'm with you, and you know the point I'm looking at for the both of you, you know, and that I'm resonating with on the both of you is, you know, I understand where Lainey's coming from in her perspective, and you know, and I understand where you're coming from with your perspective, and you know, this is a very emotional topic on both sides. I mean, and the one thing I think that all three of us can put together, just based on what we've been talking about alone, these situations are not as black and white as they are made to seem. And I think that's reality. And I mean, just kind of like, you know, we were talking about in the beginning of the show, you know, I feel like we are presented with a lot of extremes and illusions as reality. And, you know, it gets tough as a person. I understand, you know, like when we are susceptible to collective, you know, and mob thinking, group think when it comes to certain things too. You know, sometimes we get looped into it and we're not sure. I'm not saying any of you have. I'm just bringing that up as a point here. You know, it's a very touchy subject. But the one thing we could see that this isn't black and white as it's made to be. You know, like when we look at these issues portrayed in our society today, we're either portrayed as it's either this or it's this. But reality, you both just brought up this fantastic, massive gray area, you know, when we're talking about subjects like this, that I feel are not taken into account.
I appreciate what you're saying, Steve, but I feel like I've been pretty black and white. There is no gray area for me. It's none of my business.
Oh, no. I know you've been black and white as far as your opinion. I'm just talking about, like you were saying, you know, what Lainey was saying about the father wanting to have the baby and the mother not being about it. And from what you were saying about a lot of these kids out here that don't have, you know, yes, your opinions were black and white. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But through the opinions, we learned that it's not as black and white as it seems.
As a society,
yes, as a society, absolutely, as a society. So that's real, right there, guys. That's realistic. That's awesome.
And I just want to say, like,
absolutely, Lainey, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't think any party wants like the destruction of America and the American people. Like, it seems that way in the mainstream media, that it's like us versus them, and one party is trying to crumble the foundation of, you know, what America was built on, and it always goes back and forth. And I don't believe that. I think there's well-intentioned people on each side. It's just more about priorities and, you know, perspective. So I really just wanted to kind of like lay that out there and think and just say that I don't think anybody is, you know, the villain in this. I'm just really curious to understand the mindset behind what drives the initiatives and the policies and the things.
Absolutely. No,
hunger,
I'm with you, man.
Collapsing infrastructure, an education system that has been in steady decline for decades. I mean, those are, we're just talking about, if we're talking about issues that apparently I affiliate with,
Yeah.
those are the motivations.
So how would you say that the Republican Party is hindering those initiatives or those policies that you care about?
Let's throw healthcare in there too, since that's such a big one. And to answer your question, I would say they're defunding them. They're deprioritizing them. Trump promised in 2016 that he was about to unleash his beautiful healthcare for everyone. Instead, 12 million people lost healthcare during his administration. And he talked about it pretty much every month for the duration of his first administration, how he's unraveling this amazing, beautiful healthcare bill. And it was a talking point from time to time during his second campaign. That's what he does. He talks about what people are most concerned about, and he makes promises that he has no intention of keeping. And I don't understand how people haven't recognized that playbook, because it's all happening again. when really ultimately he just cares about making sure that he doesn't have to go to jail and that he makes money in the process. Motivations for infrastructure are simple. We have roads and bridges that are collapsing, and that needs to be addressed. And Joe Biden introduced the largest infrastructure bill in the history of the country, and that's really good. Trump said he would, and he didn't. Right now, Trump has removed transparency. Since we're talking about healthcare, the NIH, my wife works in healthcare, so I get a lot of good information from her. But yeah, now we're not going to be able to get statistics on illnesses and virology like we used to, because he's basically shut that off so that people can't apparently argue with him and what works well for his agenda. If you're asking me what Trump has done he put Betsy DeVos in charge of the Department of Education, which her specific function was to do nothing but defund or take away from public education every opportunity that she got. And this time, I don't even know who he's put in charge of education this time. I don't think he's picked anybody yet. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But look at his cabinet. I mean, it's a fucking joke.
Real quick.
Well, okay, so
if you don't mind, Lainey, real quick, I'm just going to put up
no.
two things from the viewers. They have something they wanted to say real quick. So we got Don Rogers at March 4th Productions. He says, my 15-year-old daughter was taken advantage of by a 23-year-old. I backed her terminating the pregnancy. She is now a mother with a man her own age. Don, thanks for sharing, man. I appreciate that. That's really deep and personal. Thanks, Don. We have Andrew from Heavyweights Life Feels. Says Republicans care about addressing the cost of living crisis that Biden admin created, which will help the children he's talking about. And then we have one more thing from him. American education rankings started to drop. So so continue on.
Yeah, like again, I'll say that the Democrats have been in office for 12 out of the past 16 years. There's been a decline in education scores. Mental health is at its worst that it's probably been in the past 20 years. The economy is terrible. Obesity is on the rise. So I'm so curious how this is all coming down on like Trump. When he was
I'm not putting it all on Trump.
And I'm sorry, and one more thing with the Department of Education and kind of some of these new policy changes with Trump coming in. It's not like he is taking away the Department of Education or doing all of these things, but I think what's going on is they're realizing that what's been happening hasn't been working, and they need like an overhaul of change. And, I don't think that they're trying to like reinvent the wheel, but what we have been doing for the past 20 years has not been good for our children, our people, Americans. And so they're trying to do something different. And yes, with that, a lot of fear comes along because everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? We've been doing the same shit for the past, this is how our government runs. And when you try and implement change, it is a very scary thing. But at the same time, like my son, he's autistic, and there's been a lot of, chatter on the Autism Mom site, like, are they going to take away IEPs and all of this stuff? And from what I know with what they're doing with the Department of Education is they're implementing more STEM programs. They want to make homeschooling and privatized education more accessible. So it's not like they're defunding programs that are going to hinder our children. Like they actually want to expedite our kids on that education spectrum to be in the running with China and all of these other countries. It's just because we take something away doesn't mean we're not going to implement something better. Does that make sense?
You're implementing, Christian prayer in school, and you're taking away Sesame Street. So you're giving something that's better according to you and your doctrine. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't want their children being spoon-fed Christianity and Christian nationalism. And
Well,
as far as
what
mental health, it has been on decline over the
critical?
last 20 years. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I mean, even up until the 70s, women were getting lobotomized because they were depressed because they thought their husband was a dick and he probably was beating her. I mean, to say that mental health is on decline, yeah, I agree, but that's a very subjective, that's a very simplified way to look at a very multifaceted issue. When it comes to mental health in this country, population has expanded and overcrowding is a major factor. Financial stability in this country, just look at the wealth divide. And if you want to talk about the effect on mental health in this country, why don't you talk to the guy who gave tax breaks to the 1%, furthering the wealth divide in this country and making it unaffordable for the working class to live? That's a mental health crisis in itself. And
I think the blue collar workers have been in a worse position than the last 4 years. But going back, I don't think children should be spoon fed Christianity or religion in schools just as much
and
as I
yet
think
that's
they
what
should be
Trump and his
spoon
administration
fed
are doing.
theory. And, having kindergartners learn about, sex education or whatever
So that's going to get into my next question for you too, because what Lainey was saying, I resonate with both of your points. We have one more thing from a viewer. So they want to privatize education, and education is currently overly inflated in costs. That's from Alex Freeman there. Thanks for being here, Freeman. Good to see you. So one thing I want to ask you guys, because Lainey kind of just started breaking into it when she was talking about, do you, both of you, feel that there should be politics involved in education? Now, what I mean by this is obviously, yes, when we're in school, we're in civics class or we're in history class. We learn, about politics. We learn about, the consensual narrative to how our system works. But what I mean is, do you feel that political propaganda by any means, whether it has to do with the right or the left, belongs in an education setting? And I know both of you are parents and both of you have kids. So I can imagine, how you both of you must have opinions on this. So let's kind of start off with that, if you don't mind. Lainey, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that there needs to be a criteria that is met, with like state evaluations and tests that's like reading, writing, arithmetic, and things like that. So like as far as like the government being implemented in it, like can you give me
So so let's say a good example of this would be, let's say the kids in, let's say late elementary school, early middle school, and they walk into the class, and in this case the teacher is a huge, can be either or, can either be a huge conservative right wing, can be either huge on the left, huge Democrat, and they are consistently splaying all of their political posters all over the room, things like that. And I mean, obviously, yeah, with certain things, there's going to be a little bit of government involvement in education.
Yeah, we need to admit,
Yeah, of course.
And everything. No, I look at that exactly like when I'm coaching. I don't care if you're Democrat or liberal, like I am coaching you through like a human experience. I'm not implementing my bias on any of my clients when I'm, coaching them. I honestly think that the whole educational system needs to be overhauled. It's not working. It's not conducive to our children. I just ended up sending my son to a very new kind of like a new school that's for student athletes. So he goes to school at the ice rink, and they bring in hockey coaches and athletic trainers. And do I think 15-year-old boys should be sitting in a desk for 9 hours a day and have 30 minutes of recreation time. No, that doesn't work. And we've been doing the same shit over and over and seeing mental health decline in our teenagers over and over again. And I really think the educational system needs a complete overhaul and rethinking of how we're teaching. And yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. Marshall, what are your thoughts? Do you think that, there should be political bias or propaganda imposed on children from both sides, when it comes to an education setting? Like especially young kids, do you think kids should be allowed to be kids and formulate their own opinions, or do you think this is an okay thing?
Oh, I agree with Lainey on that. I don't think that we should be indoctrinating children to some political platform. However, we also have to understand that teachers are not elected officials. They're human beings, and they're hired by their supervisors. And sometimes remaining completely unbiased is harder for some people than others. And I do agree that the education system needs an overhaul, but I'll point out that we spend just over 5% of our U.S. of the federal budget on education. We spent over the last decade about 15% of our budget per year on military. So yeah, like your viewer said, education is underfunded. So maybe we should start by paying teachers, building schools, and expanding education, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is apparently the idea is that public education doesn't work, even though it does in every other major developed country in the world. And we need to teach more Jesus Christ and privatize schools and let the church take over and not pay taxes, I guess.
What do you think, Lainey? What's your response to that?
Yeah, I'm trying to go through some of the things that you said. Mm-hmm. I didn't miss some. I missed some things. Were you being critical about the military getting more funding than the education system, or?
Yeah, I can pretty safely say that I'm critical of that. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I think educating the populace is more important than dropping bombs on civilians.
So you don't think the military is also in charge of national security and safety?
I didn't say that. I just don't think. I think there's a tremendous waste in the military-industrial complex, and that's been happening exponentially since the end of the Korean War, which is what Eisenhower warned us about, and it's exactly happening, just as he mentioned in his departure speech. I forget the name of that speech is called. But
Trump has just come out saying that, he wants to use a lot of the money if he, finds some. He was saying FEMA is not working and they're spending, they're getting so much funding and it's not working. He was saying we can put all of that money into education. He just said that on national television. So
yeah, the only problem with that is that
we should take out any money from the military, and actually our military is the worst it's ever been right now, and that's actually what is terrifying to me, considering the climate of the world. So I actually think we need more, but maybe being put into different, portals of the military. I think there is egregious overspending in certain aspects of the military, but taking away national security should not be a top of a priority for anyone. Right?
I'm not advocating for taking away national security, but I am advocating streamlining the military industrial complex and curtailing military spending. And I think taking away money from FEMA, by the way, Florida and Texas receive more funding from FEMA than any other states. I just find that completely ironic that's what the president. I find it actually kind of hilarious. And I have family in Florida, so I say that kind of tongue in cheek. But good luck when the next hurricane or power outage hits Texas or Florida gets wiped out because a giant hurricane comes through and it doesn't have power or water, and the insurance companies are just canceling policies because they don't want to pay, and they're all in bed with politicians. I mean, defunding FEMA is absurd to me.
That's exactly what's happening right now. But what would you say that our military spending should be spent on? Like, what should we be focusing on with military spending?
I think we should focus on protecting innocent lives and defending our borders. This is obviously being funneled into, I think, the elephant in the room here. We can talk about Israel and we can talk about Ukraine. I think we should be funding Ukraine. I don't think we should be funding Israel. I'll leave that as a short answer. If you want to reply, I have a lot more to say about that, but rather than getting long-winded about it, I'll go ahead and just put that out on the table. That's my opinion.
Well, that's a good. So that's something we can kind of like bring up here too. Like, what do both of you? Because Marshall just kind of elaborated on a little bit. We'll ask you. I mean, do you think the amount of money we're sending overseas to these different countries at this point in time? I mean, what are your thoughts on that too? I know there's a lot of mixed opinions on it. I mean, we just had Marshall kind of give that. So I mean, yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Lainey?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm really curious why Ukraine should get, support and Israel shouldn't.
My answer is that Israel's borders are not under threat, and Israel's, I don't know what the ratio is, but I'm thinking it's somewhere around 500 to 1. People are killed and Palestinians are killed versus Israelis killed. And that's a different story in Ukraine. Putin is invading Ukraine. Israel is not under invasion. There's no threat to its sovereignty. And also, again, I hate to keep mentioning my wife, but she grew up in a Soviet-occupied Latvia. And Putin is essentially starting the process of reforming the Soviet Union. And his first step in that ambitious goal is taking over Georgia, taking over Ukraine. And if Putin takes control of if he achieves his goal, that would mean the end of sovereignty for the Baltic states and other states, and taking away the humanity and human rights for countries that have done well for themselves since the fall of the Soviet Union. I'm not an expert on European policy, but I do know that Putin is trying to invade and take territory for Russia, which is, again, kind of just ridiculous considering they have the largest landmass of any other nation. They just tend to fuck everything up and then try to take over countries that are doing well. I find that really annoying. I think Putin's a very evil man. I think anybody who doesn't see that is just fucking blind. But yeah, the point is Israel's sovereignty is not in jeopardy. Ukraine's sovereignty is. That's the short answer. Sorry.
I agree that we need to support Ukraine. I definitely agree with that. But saying that Israel is not under threat of their sovereignty, I would wholeheartedly disagree. My best friend is living there. They're under attack all the time. October 7th happened only a year ago. I mean, they're constantly under threat. And, the whole premise of that war is Israel saying, like, don't want none, there won't be none. And they keep having to defend themselves. And
are there military operations in Israel?
Yes.
No, I'm talking about Palestinian operations in Israel.
Well,
no, there aren't. They're all in Gaza.
Because they are fierce defenders of their sovereignty.
That's not defense. How many people were taken hostage? 150 people. And I'm not trying to take away from the tragedy of that or the horror of that. Don't get me wrong. This is a war about revenge. And this is a war about claiming territory for Netanyahu. This isn't about protecting their borders. And that's just rhetoric. That's just saber rattling and trying to get the people behind him. He's a war criminal. And what's the name of the organization, the war crimes?
And Hamas aren't war criminals?
No, they absolutely are. Okay. And they should be held accountable. And they're being, decimated. There's a genocide happening right now. And it's not just Hamas, it's the children and the innocent civilians.
As well.
They're dying, tens of thousands. I don't know what the number is. It's over 7,000.
Over Tel Aviv all
Sorry?
the time. There's bombs coming over Tel Aviv all the time.
Over. Shot down. Yeah, Israel has a great defense network, and that's really good for them. And I think they should definitely keep that going. But they are bombing children. That's not an answer. I'm not siding with Palestine.
You don't think Gaza and Hamas and the Palestinians are they're not bombing children?
No, not really, because they have an incredible defense network in Israel. I do understand that innocent people have been hurt, and that's what triggered the war. But to compare those two things, just look at the death tolls, for Christ's sake. They're not even close. Israel lost what? 200 people in this war? How many people has Palestine lost? Look, I'll look it up. I don't know.
Well. Again, what we're looking at here, and let me just be the first to say that both of you are very valid in your opinion. Okay, and your opinions are not being negated or anything at this point. Again, what we begin to see, while your opinions might be black and white, we see that this is a huge gray area. There's a lot of things like, that when we're presented this information, whether it be through media on the TV, whether it be through media online, we're not getting the things we're discussing right now. In a lot of these cases, you do get like what you were talking about, death tolls and things like that, but we're not getting the whole story. We're not getting the truth, so this
that
is
may be, but I do want to finish my point. I just looked up a quick statistic that
go ahead. Yeah.
Roughly 46,000 Palestinians have been killed during this war, and about 1,700 Israeli citizens have been killed during this war. And I'm not trying to take away from that. My point is, Israel, if we stop funding the war in Israel's not going anywhere. If we stop funding the war in Ukraine will be dominated and taken over by Russia. And that's just the beginning of what Russia will do with that territory and with that expansion. Sorry, please continue, Steve. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to finish my thought.
No. I mean, the death tolls are they're very tragic in a war that they create. So
yeah, I agree. They're tragic. But you said that they're defending their country. They're not defending their country. They're killing thousands upon thousands of children. They're killing children. They're bombing children.
Fighting into Israel and mass murdered people.
Yes, and they've been severely punished. And I'm really glad that they got punished. But I wish that it didn't take the killing of 10,000 children to make them learn that lesson.
Me too.
And I think that bombing children is wrong.
Yeah, on both ends.
I would also point out that we're not funding Palestine. We're not funding Hamas. At least not above ground anyway. War contractors might. But we are funding Israel, and we are paying for the bombs that kill children.
Go ahead, Lainey. What were you saying?
I said I thought Biden was giving over like $40 million to the Taliban every year.
That's an interesting statistic. I don't know where you're getting that data, but I'd be happy to read up on it.
Well, the one thing I'm going to say is this. We can definitely see that this is a super passionate issue for the both of you. And we did find. I mean, both of you believe killing children is wrong. I mean,
we were able to come to terms on that one.
Thank goodness, because if either one of you believed that was okay, we'd be having a very different conversation at this point in time. But no, this is the conversation we need to have, because there's been this disconnect between both of these different perspectives, and we're really starting to get a feel for not only where you're coming from, Lainey, as far as your perspective goes, we're getting a little bit of a interesting perspective from Marshall here as well. And this is something I would like to definitely address later on, but with the time that we have left, let's get to one of the last issues I want to talk with you guys about. We're going to start going through immigration. Now, immigration, obviously we see what's been happening with Trump in the news as of right now. There's been, in fact, the immigration topic has been kind of a hot topic now for the past we're going on like almost 10 years, 9 years at this point. It's been really big. It's always been somewhat big, but it seems to have gained more headway in the recent weeks. So, Lainey, let's get your opinion on, the immigration issue. I mean, what do you feel about, the whole issue with the 14th Amendment, excuse me, at this point in time, getting rid of, birthright citizenship? Do you feel that, what's going on as far as immigration can be handled better? I mean, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I'm still trying to educate myself on the whole birthright citizenship. That's kind of a tough line for me to toe.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say when I vote, national security is of the top priority, and it was extremely concerning what has been going on with our southern border. And my husband was special operations and has dealt with an element of terror threat of people that want to come into our country and dismantle our foundations and our freedoms. And so for me, national security takes precedence over the social justice issues that I have already said that I am, pretty, I fall in line with. But yeah, it's terrifying, allowing droves of people to come in. We don't know who we are. The fentanyl crisis is out of control. The sex trafficking is horrible. There's nothing good about just allowing entry without knowing who's coming in. There's absolutely nothing okay with it.
And the one thing I'm going to add to your point, Lainey, too, is as a recovering opioid addict, it's been 17 years. I'm good. Don't worry. And, and things like that. So, but, no, the fentanyl crisis is, one of the biggest things. I honestly, and I'll leave this and then we'll get to Marshall, but, I feel there's some kind of agenda with the opioid crisis at this point in time. And the reason why I say that is the nitazines being on the street. These drugs are meant to take down 1,200-pound animals. Okay. And why? I mean, when you look at drug dealers want return customers. They want you to come back and buy more shit, right? I mean, that's how drug dealing works. But at this case, you're looking at, let's kill your customers instead. So in my personal opinion, I'm with you on that. It is out of hand. And
it's dermal. It's,
yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And why would you have drugs and circulate drugs onto the street that are meant to tranquilize tigers and freaking giraffes and things like that? That's I agree with you. But Marshall, let's hear your thoughts on immigration as well. I mean, what do you think about the 14th Amendment potentially getting overturned? And what are your thoughts on the border crisis and immigration as a whole at this point in time?
I don't like the term border crisis, first of all, because I feel like, I don't like borders in the first place. I guess I should just really back up. I don't know where you stand on this, either of you. Well, I have an idea where you stand, Lainey, but as far as you, Steve, I'm not sure where this falls with your spiritual beliefs. But the idea that this country belongs to us in the first place is absurd and nonsensical. It's not our country. We are immigrants as a whole, and we killed, raped, and pillaged our way in here, and it wasn't that long ago. And to think that we deserve to have total, absolute control over who comes in and comes out when they're just looking for a better way of life, by and large, I think is evil. So I am not for open borders. I am for a path to citizenship. However, I would also point out that Biden deported more illegal immigrants than Trump did during his administration. But that's not really the point. I'm not here to defend Joe Biden. I don't really care about Joe Biden. But this idea that we are turning families away and turning children away and separating them from their families because we're afraid that they're going to do crimes here, when we are, by every metric, by every definition, criminals. And we achieved our status here in this country as murderers and criminals. So what the solution is? Well, stop making so many fucking babies. That's the start. Overpopulation would solve almost every major political issue that we talked about today, and just about every other one that there is. We are overpopulated, and the fact is the world is never going back to what it was. We're all going to die sometime soon, whether it's from a plague or nuclear fallout. And that's by and large because there's just not enough room for as many people as there are. The crisis on the border isn't going anywhere. A wall won't stop people from coming over. More border agents might curtail the issue for a while. I don't know. But the fact is, people who are dying there and they have an opportunity to live a better life here are going to try and do that, whether they have bad intentions, criminal intentions, or not. So unfortunately, I don't have a solution per se, but I also recognize that this isn't our country, and we're lucky to have held some sort of semblance of civility as long as we have. We're all fucked. And it's just a matter of time. And to deny those people who are looking for a better life, it's just further exemplifies how horrible we are as a culture and have been historically.
Well, you know, yeah.
I gotta respond to that.
Go ahead, Lainey. Yeah.
I'm so like taken aback by the notion that America is the only country that's founded itself on like rape and pillage and like
I didn't say that.
Like literally every country. No, but like you've given a notion that we are these horrible people, that we think that the land is ours and we want to preserve it for, you know, American people. And I don't know that that's like a bad thing. Do I think that there should be a way of entry? There is a legal way of entry. Do I think there needs to be a more expedited way for that? Yes, I do. I think we need to be putting more resources in so that we can get refugees, people who are fleeing into the country as citizens sooner. But
if you look at the Department of Immigration and Naturalization's website, the first step of seeking asylum is enter the country. They're not entering illegally if they're seeking asylum.
Entry.
Not well. If a port of entry is not accessible, I don't even know if that's right. By the way, I'll have to look up the terminology. And now that Trump's there, I'm not even sure if we'll be able to access that. I know we can't if we only read Spanish.
Wife is an immigrant. JD Vance's wife is an immigrant. Like the fact that everybody thinks that Trump and like Republicans are against immigration, like that's crazy. We just want to know who is coming in and that it's safe people and people who are going to give back to the country and not just reap the benefits from being in America. You have to be a member of society when you come here. You don't just get to, you know, take from the pool. Maybe I'm, you know, cold-hearted and thinking that way, but I think we want productive members of society coming into the country. But yes, I think there needs to be an expedited way of entry for people who want to come in and seek asylum and want a better way of life and the dreamers. But just having like a free-for-all is fucking crazy. Sorry.
Well, I would point out that illegal immigrants pay taxes and they pay into Social Security and they pay into Medicare, but they're not eligible for those benefits. Sorry?
How do they do that if they're illegal immigrants?
Well, their status may be illegal, but they do have access to work and they pay into Social Security.
They get paid cash under the table.
Sometimes that's the case, and those people probably don't pay into Social Security.
Yeah, well, how do you pay into taxes and Social Security if you need an ID and a Social Security number and all of that to get a bank?
They pay through sales, through excise tax payments and everyday purchases. Apparently, in 2022, they paid upwards of $15 billion.
Tax.
Sorry?
They might pay sales tax. But
they do pay sales tax.
I understand, but they don't pay federal income tax.
And they don't receive benefits.
Well, they're not American citizens.
We agree on that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying that they don't take from the system without giving to the system, which is what your argument was.
Well, the illegal immigrants coming in now that are getting Medicaid, and they're getting housing, and they're getting debit cards, and they're getting phones. Yes, they are taking from the federal income tax pool. Absolutely, they
And
are.
getting a debit card doesn't put you in a position to take from.
Away from these hungry American children that you spoke about during the first question. So
Just want to
yes,
point out that a
they're
debit card isn't taking away from federal tax money. Isn't
getting
taking
paid
away.
for, who
It's
pays for
it's
the
an opportunity for them to pay into the system and create more commerce and more boost to the
debt?
economy.
Where is that coming from?
Coming from a bank.
It's coming from taxpayers.
I'm not following you. I have a debit card and taxpayers aren't paying for it. I pay for the transactions that I do on my debit card.
The government is giving them a debit card that is stocked from tax.
Well, they're paying taxes. I'd have to know what you're talking. I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry.
Federal tax. They're paying taxes if they buy a Pepsi. They're paying a tax on that, but they're not paying federal income tax.
They're paying taxes if they buy anything, not just the lowest cost item on the market. They also buy cars. They also buy computers. They buy electronics and television.
Legal
Sorry?
immigrants need to have
Sorry?
documentation to buy, unless they're paying cash from, a random seller.
And if they're paying cash to a random seller and that seller uses cash to pay for items.
Property tax if they're not documented.
I mean, I'm glad that you think that taxation is unavoidable, but it's not. Even if they are paying cash under the table, that still gets worked back into our economy, which is a good thing.
That's the only tax they're paying is sales tax. They're not paying property taxes. They're not paying federal income taxes. So
they're paying excise taxes as well.
Individual item sales tax, which is the minimum of the minimum tax that you can pay.
Yeah, but they're also not claiming Social Security benefits. And they're not claiming Medicare. They're not claiming entitlements.
All right, I'm done.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll drop this one for now, guys. Good day, man. The one thing I can't commend you both enough on, you both are being mature adults, at least, when it comes to, we're not erupting into, what we talked about in the beginning of the show. So, obviously, again, this is a very passionate issue amongst our collective at this point in time. A lot of people have a lot of emotions. I mean, the one thing I resonate with both of you on your points. I mean, and you both have very valid points, when you're bringing things to the table, and you both have very valid opinions. I mean, the one thing I'll say is this is, the best thing we can find in common at this point in time is you both believe we should not have open borders. You both believe we should have this expedited process for citizenship for those who really need it. And I feel like these are great points to focus on when we're looking at this. I feel a lot in our society, we overemphasize the cons when it comes to a lot of issues, and instead of looking at the pros. And I'm with the both of you. I do think we should have some kind of expedited process for people who need to come in and be citizens. I don't think we should have open borders and have free reign, allowing everybody to run in, whoever pleases. As far as my spiritual beliefs go on that, I mean, yes, essentially from a spiritual standpoint, this planet is everyone's. It is ours as a people. You know what I mean? It's such an interesting area when you even talk about the spiritual aspect of this too, because then we kind of start getting into densities and things like that, because we're in the spiritual realm, and I mean even in physics we're in the third dimension, and in this dimension we have the black and white, we have the duality, and it's a very interesting set of rules here in this place at this point in time when it comes to things like that. But and the grand scheme of things, yes, this planet is ours. It's not the government's. It's ours as people. From the spiritual aspect, what we're dealing with right now, in my opinion, until my big thing is this, until our collective is morally, ethically, emotionally, and mentally ready, to handle the responsibility of this planet being ours, like in its full entirety. So that's kind of like, I might not look it. I look as white as hell. I know I do, but my mom's side of the family came over here from Italy in the 20s, and my dad's side of the family came over here from Greece around the same time. They both went through the Great Depression, all of that. So I do believe, immigration in a sense is what made this country what it is today. I mean, if we look at history, we look at the boats to New York back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when New York was, coming into fruition and things like that, and really becoming the city it is today. So, I mean, it's a passionate subject for a lot of people. I mean, especially because all of us have some track record of our family coming over here at some point. And I mean, even with the I guess you could say the British pilgrimage, the first one being in the late 1500s, and then the traditional one being in, Jamestown and then Plymouth Rock, all of that. So nonetheless, it's I do think immigration in a lot of ways is what made this country what it is today. But at the same time, we live in a very different world. That's something that I like emphasize a lot here, but nonetheless, we're getting kind of close to the end of everything. There's one thing I wanted to run by the both of you real quick. This is just for reference sake too. So, and this is a favorite article of mine. I like to read it to everybody. So don't, it is what it is. So one of the biggest things too, we just have to keep in mind here. We have on the Psychology Today, we have how political leaders strategically manipulate us. And this is just something I definitely want to bring to light because I see this. I definitely recommend you check out Rose's podcast too. She's got the Pacific Heart podcast. I've given it a listen. She's very good. So we have the key takeaways from this. We get leaders get people to follow them, even when it's not in the followers' economic or other interests. Leaders use emotion and identity to attract and manipulate followers. They define in-group and out-group by manipulating emotions, especially anger, fear, and outrage. They solidify an in-group and stress unity against some out-group, which they claim poses a threat. Emotion provides information for decision-making, especially in the allocation of resources for in-groups and against out-groups. Emotion focuses attention. Emotion is an efficient way for leaders to manipulate followers. Specific emotions are used strategically. Gender differences in emotions are important. This is kind of funny. Don't laugh at me for saying this. White suburban women, for example, did indeed become a swing group for 2016 to 2018. I know. Identity is pretty fungible. We classify each other in a variety of ways: race, gender, class, religion. We pick identities to enhance self-esteem, create community, enhance a sense of status and power, and allow us to feel good about ourselves. Leaders can take advantage of this, again, using identity strategically. But our ideas of identities and their boundaries change. For example, gender identity is now being recognized as being more fluid and not binary. I didn't touch that tonight. We didn't have enough time. We'll definitely talk about a round two with you too. Through emotional persuasion, leaders get followers to adhere to a particular partisan identity. Leaders emphasize that by sticking with them, followers can avoid harm. I just wanted to bring that up because the one thing I want to sum up, I see two really awesome people. I see two intelligent people who know their stuff, who have done the research, whether what source the source material differs or not. You both have done research. You guys are very passionate about all of this. And I think the key takeaways we can get from tonight's show are this. You both are parents. You both love your children. You wish well for the children of the world, as we all do. You know what I mean? And, you guys also are human beings. You both have the right to your opinions and how you feel without anybody telling you it's wrong. And I'm not telling you any of your opinions are wrong tonight, because that to me is the beautiful thing. You know, everybody's experience is special and unique to themselves. And that's the way it's meant to be. Or else if we were all the same, this would be one boring ass world. Like it would be stupid boring. You guys believe we should at least have some kind of expedited process, you know, for getting into the country. You don't believe in open borders. You know, and you guys feel the education system is on decline. Like, you know, we need a better education system for our kids. I completely 100% agree with that, man. You know, because even when I was in high school, my last year in high school, 2006, I felt like I wasn't taught anything that was applicable to the real world. I had a little bit of a learning curve. I don't know. Maybe my school system did a little bit different than you guys. I don't know. But nonetheless, guys, I want to congratulate the both of you for being well-mannered, for being respectful. You know, I know there was a couple times it got really passionate here. And but I appreciate that, you know, and I appreciate that we could have this conversation tonight, because this is where it begins. This is what will cause the snowball effect of change. I even though it got a little passionate, I think this was civil discourse. Nobody erupted into, you know, a fit of anger, I mean, there was emotional periods, don't get me wrong, but it was never, I think it was an explanation of the frustration as opposed to an expression. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on as a collective at this time, is the explanation, not the expression. And because when we express our distaste or our anger for others, we don't get our point across. You know, we eventually end up turning that person off to us, or that person turns us off to them, vice versa. But when we have the explanation, as we did tonight, we can walk away with some kind of understanding for each other, even if we might not see eye to eye or necessarily agree with each other. So I want to thank you both from the bottom of my heart for that tonight. So real quick, before we head off, I did put, in case anybody wanted to reach out to you, I did put you guys' Facebook profiles in the description. Of course, that is up to you to whether you want to communicate with anybody or not. Feel free to block them if they want to be freaking weird. I am definitely not going to judge you for that at all. But if there's anywhere else or anything else you're doing you would like to have people come and check out, I know, you know, because I'm a health and fitness fanatic myself. I know Lainey has her thing. So why don't you go off on that real quick and let everybody know?
Yeah, I just want to kind of log off by saying, you know, as a psychedelic coach, I have seen the interconnectedness of, you know, the human race, and, you know, we all have this shared experience, and it's very powerful, and we can have difference in ideas. But Marshall, thank you so much for just giving your viewpoint and your opinions, and allowing me to kind of learn and understand where you're coming from. I'm still not fully, you know, I still think we might still be living in a simulation. I'm not really sure, but you know, we very well could be. But I really want everybody to just have the best human experience as possible. So I know I have some kind of harsh outlooks, but I do also, like, I'm an American, I'm a patriot, and there are nefarious and evil people out there who do want to do us harm. So I think that a lot of my stances really resonate around that. But yes, thank you. You can find me on, if you're a veteran or a first responder, we're happy to help you with mental health and wellness services at Humble Warrior Wellness Center. Just Google it, and then look up Lainey Elaine Brewer on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever. But, yeah.
And the
Guys,
one thing
so much, Marshall, I really appreciate you for coming on, and yeah, hopefully we weren't too bad, but
no, you guys were great. And one thing I'm going to say, I completely agree with you, Lainey. We are in some kind of very strange conscious simulation. That, at least in my opinion, and I have some, you know, I have a little bit of harsh. I think we should bring back the the lion pit for sex traffickers and, you know, pedophiles and things like that. I just don't like people fucking with children. I don't like it. It's this one. So I have some harsh things myself. So don't feel bad about that. I think a lot of us have that area in us, or that distaste for something so greatly.
I think I just have that mama bear protective sense in me, and that's not against anybody else or only like Americans. I feel that, but you know, there is a sense of loyalty to my country. Not that I don't care about other children or other people, but yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, there's some bad actors out there, and I tread lightly with that.
Well said. Well said.
I just want to go on record and saying I don't think people should fuck kids either.
No, exactly.
So,
Dude, I'm telling you, it's
get
not a
that
good.
out there.
That's why, I mean, the lion pit, you know, the lion pit was me. Like one day I was like, you know what, like this will scare that out of anybody. You got 5 hungry lions waiting for you if you touch a kid the wrong way. Hopefully that would scare the pedo out of people. But Lainey, if you don't mind hanging out for a second, I'm gonna ask Marshall to hang out for a couple minutes after the show too. But Marshall, let's I got your Facebook link at the bottom. But you know, if you have anything else you're working on, or you want to talk about your contracting business and have people hit you up, now is the time to do that.
I really appreciate that. No, I don't have anything to plug or anything like that, but I'm very appreciative that you guys shared your opinions and your time with me. So thank you so much. I wouldn't mind, you know, if we ever do this again, maybe we could talk about our place in the universe and our thoughts
Absolutely.
on pedophiles and stuff like that. Those are big subjects, and I have a lot of thoughts on those things too. Whether anyone cares or not, I don't know. But if we come back, just maybe we can put a pin in those things.
Hey, absolutely. No, and I want to do, and that's why I want to have you guys hang out for a sec after the show's over, because I want to do a round 2, and we maybe touch on some things we didn't touch tonight. And you know, I know you're both are spiritual people, and that's something all 3 of us resonate on here. You know, there is at least in my opinion, a divine nature to this existence that we're in. And I agree with Marshall, you know, when it comes to the organized religion aspect of it, I don't think that's the way. I do think that, you know, we have discoveries such as panpsychism and physics, you know, talking about consciousness being the prime fundamental of existence. I do think that is a gateway to what's really going on and what we're experiencing here. But nonetheless, guys, if you want to check out Lainey or Marshall, I have their Facebook links in the bottom of the description of both the Rumble and the YouTube videos. I will be back next week with the Dream Team. I will be joined by Official Urban, the Nerd in Charge, and Stove. We are going to be digesting some interesting things that are going on in the world, especially interesting things on the internet and the GATE program and other topics in that category. But guys, thanks again for joining me tonight for another BGcast Wednesday live podcast. Thank you again for Lainey and Marshall being such amazing sports and awesome human beings. I will catch you all next Wednesday. You guys have a great night. Take care.